Imagine a waitress transforming into the USSR's most cunning swindler. Bella Borodkina did just that, crafting an empire of deceit that shocked a nation. How did she rise from serving tables to orchestrating the ultimate con? From waitress to queen of Gelendzhik. In the tapestry of Soviet history, filled with tales of espionage, political upheavals, and revolutionary heroes, the story of Bella Borodkina stands out for its sheer audacity and uniqueness. Her journey from an ordinary waitress to a notorious criminal mastermind reads like a script from a suspense thriller, offering a glimpse into the complexities of Soviet society and the lengths one woman went to exploit its vulnerabilities. Bella's early life was unremarkable, mirroring the existence of countless Soviet citizens striving for survival and a semblance of happiness in the post-war USSR. The future Queen of Gelendzhik moved to Odessa after the war, and an unsuccessful marriage in 1951 marked the beginning of a new chapter in her life. Seeking a fresh start, she left for Gelendzhik, a decision that would set her on a path far removed from anything she had known before. Gelendzhik, with its picturesque views of the Black Sea, offered Bella a canvas to paint her ambitious designs. She started as a waitress in a local cafe, a position far from glamorous but crucial for what was to come. It was here, amidst the clinking of glasses and the murmur of diners, that Bella's keen mind began to weave the first threads of her elaborate schemes. Her rise from waitress to barmaid and then to the manager of the cafe was meteoric. Bella possessed a unique blend of charm, wit, and ruthlessness, enabling her to navigate the complexities of the Soviet service industry. She wasn't content with merely managing. She wanted to own, to control, and to expand. And so she did. Bella's innovative schemes for deceiving customers were nothing short of genius. She personally trained the cooks to add bread instead of meat, a simple yet effective way to reduce costs and boost profits. This single scheme brought in more than 80,000 rubles, a fortune at the time when a two-room apartment cost about 10,000 rubles. But she didn't stop there. Her creativity knew no bounds. Tea was replaced with caramelized sugar to give color, portions of butter were cut in half, and dairy products were diluted with water, though always boiled, to avoid any health issues that could unravel her deceit. What set Bella apart was not just her aptitude for fraud, but her ability to lead and inspire loyalty. She assembled a team that put her teachings into practice, ensuring a steady flow of income. Her operations were a masterclass in manipulation and control, extending far beyond the cafe to the entire dining scene of Gelendzhik. She became a formidable figure, feared and respected in equal measure. Bella's success was built on more than just culinary deception. It was rooted in her understanding of human nature, of the greed and corruption that lay hidden beneath the surface of Soviet society. She knew how to exploit these weaknesses, ensuring the silence of officials through bribes and the complicity of her employees through a mix of fear and rewards. Her lifestyle became as extravagant as her schemes. Adorned with bright jewelry and surrounded by young men, Bella no longer resembled the humble waitress she once was. She became a symbol of both the potential for upward mobility in the Soviet Union and the deep flaws within its economic system. The art of the swindle, Borodkina's schemes unveiled. In the heart of the Soviet Union, where the iron grip of regulation attempted to control every aspect of economic life, Bella Borodkina operated a shadow empire built on deceit and ingenuity. Her schemes, ranging from the audaciously simple to the ingeniously complex, not only brought her immense wealth, but also laid bare the vulnerabilities of Soviet society. This chapter delves into the specifics of Borodkina's swindles, painting a picture of a woman who turned deception into an art form. At the core of Bella's operation was the manipulation of food, a commodity as essential as it was scrutinized in the USSR. The practice of adding bread to meat dishes, ostensibly to save costs, was perhaps her simplest trick, yet it was revolutionary in its audacity. By reducing the amount of meat in dishes served at her establishments, Bella could sell the saved meat at kebab stands, turning a substantial profit. This scheme alone netted her over 80,000 rubles, a staggering sum in a country where the average citizen struggled to make ends meet. But Borodkina did not stop there. She pioneered a method to save on tea leaves by adding caramelized sugar to water, giving it color and a semblance of flavor. This not only reduced costs, but also exploited the Soviet consumers' lack of access to quality goods, a vulnerability Borodkina understood and capitalized on brilliantly. Perhaps more insidious was her approach to dairy products. Butter portions were halved, while sour cream and milk were diluted with boiled water. This particular detail, insisting on boiled water, showcases Borodkina's cunning. It was a safeguard, a nod to health standards that could otherwise unravel her empire through a food poisoning scandal. The alcohol scheme, however, was where Borodkina's brilliance truly shone. Diluting expensive cognac with cheaper rye vodka, she managed to stretch her supplies further while maintaining the illusion of luxury. This practice was not only profitable but also reflective of a broader Soviet issue, the pervasive shortage and the constant quest for luxury goods, which made even diluted alcohol a commodity in high demand. Borodkina's operations were a microcosm of Soviet society's broader vulnerabilities: a shortage economy, a populace desperate for quality and luxury, and a bureaucratic system so cumbersome that it could be easily manipulated by those willing to take the risk. Her schemes were built on the foundation of these vulnerabilities, exploiting them to create a business that was as profitable as it was illegal. Yet, it wasn't just Borodkina's understanding of the market that allowed her to succeed. It was also her grasp of human nature. She knew that the Soviet citizen, deprived of quality goods and services, would seldom question the authenticity of what they were provided, as long as it bore the semblance of luxury. This psychological insight was crucial in maintaining her empire, as it ensured a steady stream of customers, blissfully unaware of the deceit behind their meals. Borodkina's relationship with the authorities was another critical aspect of her operation. Her ability to bribe and manipulate officials highlighted a corrupt system where loyalty could be bought, and silence was golden. This systemic corruption was not just a backdrop for Borodkina's rise. It was a pillar that supported her empire at every turn. In dissecting Borodkina's schemes, one cannot help but marvel at the audacity and creativity of her operations. Yet these schemes also reflect a darker side of the Soviet Union, a side where scarcity and corruption were part of everyday life, and where an enterprising individual could exploit these conditions to their advantage. Empire of deceit, building a criminal network. As Bella Borodkina's fraudulent practices began to rake in substantial profits, her ambitions swelled beyond the confines of a single cafe. The transformation of her operations into a sprawling empire of deceit required not just cunning and audacity, but also the assembly of a loyal team and the forging of strategic alliances with those in power. This chapter delves into how Borodkina expanded her network, ensnaring Gelenzik's dining scene in her web, and cultivating relationships that allowed her empire to thrive in the shadow of widespread corruption. Borodkina's first step towards empire building was to establish a team that shared her vision, or at the very least her appetite for wealth. She handpicked individuals not just for their culinary skills, but for their discretion and loyalty. Training them in the art of deception, she created a tight-knit group capable of executing her schemes with precision. These were not mere employees. They were co-conspirators, bound together by the secret of their success and the illicit nature of their work. With her team in place, Borodkina set her sights on expansion. She leveraged her initial successes to take control of other dining establishments in Gelendzik, each new acquisition becoming another node in her network. Her establishments varied in appearance and target audience, but all operated under the same principles of fraud and deception. From upscale restaurants to humble cafes, Borodkina's influence permeated the city's dining scene, allowing her to monopolize the market and eliminate competition. But Borodkina's empire was not built on culinary prowess alone. Understanding that her operations existed on the knife edge of legality, she cultivated relationships with law enforcement and party officials. These relationships were her insurance policy, a means to ensure that her establishments operated without interference from the authorities. Bribes and favors became the currency of her dealings with officials, a system of quid pro quo that ensured mutual benefit. Police officers turned a blind eye to complaints about her businesses, while party officials enjoyed the perks of luxury dining and exclusive services. The corruption that facilitated Borodkina's rise was endemic in the Soviet system, a reflection of the rot that had set into the fabric of the state. In a society where scarcity and restrictions were the norms, the lure of luxury and excess proved irresistible to many, including those who wielded power. Borodkina's genius lay in her ability to exploit this weakness, to offer something that was scarce and thus highly valued. Her establishments became havens for the elite, places where they could indulge in the pleasures denied to the average citizen, further entrenching her position and power. Yet Borodkina's dealings with officials were not merely transactions. They were intricate dances of power and persuasion. She was not just a businesswoman, but a master manipulator, adept at playing the complex social and political games that defined Soviet life. Her relationships with officials were carefully managed, a balancing act of providing enough to maintain their loyalty without becoming so indispensable as to threaten their positions. As her empire grew, so too did Borodkina's audacity. She ventured into more overt forms of criminal activity, from organizing clandestine gambling operations to facilitating illicit trade in luxury goods. Each new venture was a testament to her untouchable status, a status that was as much a product of her ingenuity as it was of the corruption she had woven into the fabric of her operations. Borodkina's empire of deceit was a microcosm of Soviet society, a place where ambition and corruption collided with the ideals of socialism and equality. Her rise to power was a tale of paradoxes, of a system that preached collective welfare while fostering individual greed, of a society that condemned capitalism while enabling the rise of a capitalist par excellence. Downfall of an empire, the investigation and arrest. The empire that Bella Borodkina had meticulously built began to crumble, not with a bang, but with a whisper that grew into a chorus of accusations, investigations, and ultimately her downfall. This chapter recounts the unraveling of Borodkina's empire, focusing on the investigation that exposed her, the raid that shocked the nation, and the societal and media response that turned her from a shadowy figure into a symbol of corruption in the Soviet Union. The beginning of the end came unexpectedly. A complaint from a concerned citizen, perhaps one of the few not under Borodkina's sway, set the gears of justice in motion. The complaint, seemingly minor in the grand scheme of her empire, concerned the clandestine screenings of illicit films. Yet, it was enough to draw the eyes of the authorities towards Borodkina and her operations. What had once been overlooked due to bribes and influence suddenly became the focus of an intense investigation. The authorities, perhaps embarrassed by the extent to which Borodkina had been allowed to operate unhindered, launched a full-scale probe into her activities. The investigation quickly uncovered a web of deceit and corruption far more intricate and extensive than anyone had anticipated. Borodkina's connections with law enforcement and party officials, once her shield, now became the focal point of the inquiry, implicating those who had partaken in her bribes and luxuries. The raid on Borodkina's home was a spectacle that would have been unimaginable in her heyday. Expecting to find evidence of financial misconduct, the investigators were unprepared for the scale of wealth they discovered. Lavish furniture, expensive clothing, and jewelry were just the beginning. The discovery of jars filled with money, amounting to nearly 500,000 rubles, equivalent to almost $700,000 at the time, sent shockwaves through the Soviet system. Here was tangible proof of Borodkina's criminal empire, amassed through years of deceit and exploitation. The public reaction was a mixture of shock, outrage, and fascination. The media frenzy that followed the raid turned Borodkina into a household name, a symbol of the corruption festering within the Soviet Union. Newspapers, television, and radio broadcasts detailed the lavish lifestyle that Borodkina had led, contrasting it sharply with the austerity and shortages experienced by the average Soviet citizen. Her story became a cautionary tale of greed and corruption, discussed in kitchens and workplaces across the country. For many, Borodkina's downfall was a vindication of the justice system, a sign that no one, no matter how powerful, was above the law. For others, it was a window into the lives of the Soviet elite, revealing the stark disparities between the ruling class and the populace. The revelation of her connections with high-ranking officials led to a crisis of confidence, as people questioned the integrity of those tasked with upholding socialist ideals. The investigation and subsequent media coverage laid bare the underbelly of Soviet society, exposing not just a single criminal mastermind, but a system rife with corruption. Borodkina's empire, built on deceit and exploitation, was a symptom of a larger malaise, a society where the scramble for wealth and luxury had corrupted the very foundations of the state. Trial and shocking sentence. The trial of Bella Borodkina unfolded with the eyes of the Soviet Union intently watching, a public spectacle that would conclude her astonishing descent from the heights of illicit power. This chapter examines the trial process, Borodkina's behavior throughout her custody, the reaction to her unprecedented sentence, and situates her punishment within the broader Soviet approach to economic crimes and justice. As the courtroom doors swung open to the public and press, the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. The Soviet legal system, often shrouded in secrecy and efficiency, was about to publicly adjudicate a case that had exposed the underbelly of its society. Borodkina, once the unassailable queen of Galenzic's dining scene, now found herself in the defendant's dock, her fate hanging in the balance of a system she had managed to elude for years. Throughout the trial, Borodkina's demeanor oscillated between defiant confidence and resigned acceptance. Initially, she seemed to believe that her network of influence could still save her, displaying a certain poise that spoke of her erstwhile untouchable status. However, as the proceedings dragged on and the depth of her crimes was laid bare, her composure began to crack. Witnesses testified to her manipulation and deceit, painting a picture of a woman who had exploited every loophole and vulnerability in the Soviet system for personal gain. The prosecution argued fervently for the severest of penalties, citing the vast scope of Borodkina's criminal enterprise and its impact on Soviet society. They depicted her not just as a thief, but as a corrupter of morals, an individual whose actions had undermined the socialist ethos of equality and honesty. The defense, meanwhile, attempted to downplay the severity of her crimes, arguing that Borodkina was a product of her environment, compelled by the systemic flaws of the Soviet Union to seek out unorthodox means of survival and success. When the sentence was finally handed down, a death sentence for economic crimes, the courtroom erupted into a melange of emotions. It was a verdict unprecedented in its severity for crimes of this nature, reflecting the state's desire to make an example of Borodkina. The shock of the sentence resonated beyond the courtroom, igniting debates across kitchens, factories, and offices throughout the country. Public reaction was divided. Some saw it as a just end for a person who had egregiously exploited her fellow citizens, while others viewed it as an overly harsh punishment, symptomatic of a legal system more interested in spectacle than in justice. Privately, the sentence devastated Borodkina's family and close associates, who had hoped for leniency. To them, the verdict was not just the loss of a loved one, but a grim reminder of the merciless nature of the Soviet legal apparatus. In the broader context, Borodkina's sentence underscored the Soviet Union's harsh stance on economic crimes, particularly those that threaten the state's image or the socialist moral fabric. The legal system, often criticized for its opacity and arbitrariness, was used to send a clear message that economic corruption would not be tolerated, regardless of the individual's status or connections. The trial and sentencing of Bella Borodkina became a landmark moment in Soviet legal history, a confluence of crime, punishment, and politics. It highlighted the complexities of administering justice in a society riddled with contradictions, where the lines between legality and morality, corruption and survival, were often blurred. Borodkina's story, from her meteoric rise to her dramatic fall, served as a cautionary tale about the limits of ambition and the inescapable reach of the state. Legacy and Reflections. The execution of Bela Borodkina marked a profound moment in Soviet history, a narrative conclusion to a saga that had captivated the nation. However, the aftermath of her death and the refusal to release her body to her daughter added a poignant epilogue to her story, underscoring the often harsh realities of the Soviet legal and penal system. This chapter reflects on the legacy of Borodkina's case, its impact on Soviet society, the legal system, and how it parallels other similar cases, maintaining its relevance and interest in the broader context of historical justice. In the days following Borodkina's execution, the Soviet Union grappled with the moral and ethical questions her case had raised. The refusal to release her body, a final act of state control, symbolized the totality of her erasure from society. This decision was a stark reminder of the state's power over individuals, even in death, reinforcing a message of deterrence against similar crimes. For Borodkina's family, particularly her daughter, this refusal translated into a personal tragedy, amplifying their loss with the denial of a traditional closure. The public reaction to Borodkina's fate was mixed, reflecting a society in flux. Some viewed her as a villain who had received her just desserts, while others saw her as a victim of an overly punitive legal system. Her story became a subject of intense discussion, raising questions about justice, punishment, and the extent to which an individual should be held accountable for exploiting systemic vulnerabilities. Borodkina's case left an indelible mark on Soviet legal practices, particularly concerning economic crimes. In a system where legal proceedings were often shrouded in secrecy, her highly publicized trial and the severity of her sentence served as both a caution and a spectacle. It highlighted the Soviet state's determination to combat economic crimes and corruption, yet it also exposed the potential for legal excesses in the name of deterrence. The harshness of Borodkina's punishment forced a re-evaluation of the balance between the severity of the crime and the proportionality of the penalty, sparking debates within legal circles and among the general populace about the nature of justice and rehabilitation. The legacy of Borodkina's case can be seen in its parallels with other instances of economic crime in both the Soviet Union and other regimes, where individuals exploited systemic weaknesses for personal gain. Her story is not unique to the Soviet context. Throughout history, there have been many instances where economic desperation has led to creative but illegal solutions to systemic problems. The universal themes of ambition, corruption, and the eventual confrontation with justice resonate across different societies and epochs, making Borodkina's story a compelling case study in the broader narrative of crime and punishment. Borodkina's saga also serves as a reflection on the nature of power and corruption within the Soviet Union. Her ability to manipulate the system to her advantage and the extensive network of corruption that facilitated her rise underscored the vulnerabilities in the Soviet economic and political structure. Her case prompted a closer examination of these systemic issues, highlighting the need for reforms and greater transparency within the legal system and beyond. In the years following Borodkina's execution, her story continued to inspire discussions about the role of the individual within the state, the limits of authority, and the pursuit of justice in a complex society. Her legacy is multifaceted, embodying the contradictions of the Soviet experience: ambition and repression, innovation and legality, prosperity and punishment. It is a legacy that continues to provoke reflection on the nature of justice, the ethics of punishment, and the human capacity for both creativity and corruption.